Hello and welcome to NOV Live International. I'm Michael Gaines, host of the podcast NOV Today, and glad you're with us as we start to round out this week of conversations on technology across the energy industry. Been speaking with several experts and others that have really shed some innovative and interesting perspectives on technology and all its forms. And we look forward to continuing that conversation today. We'll be speaking on Topside solutions and what that looks like from NOV. And we'll be bringing in our expert in just one moment. Before we do that, we're going to go ahead and head over to Shelby Dumaine, NOV's social media manager, to tell us how you can be a part of today's conversation. Hey, Shelby.
Hey, Michael. We're here at the last day. It's been such a great week of shows, and I think we've had some really, really great discussions with all of our experts. So you watching at home, if you'd like to join the conversation, you can put your comments or any questions you have in the comment section, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn. I'll be live in the comments throughout the entire show. So we're going to get to as many questions as possible.
All right. Thanks, Shelby. So today's conversation will revolve around the idea and concept on Topside solutions. So we spoke with our expert, Rune Fantoft, who is the Senior Vice President of Wellstream Processing yesterday, and we have the opportunity to talk to him again today, about Topsides and what that looks like. So Rune, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Good to be back and looking forward to the conversation.
So for those that are maybe wanting kind of a higher level view and approach to understanding, okay, how you're talking about Topside solutions from the kind of the process and flow technology standpoint. How do we start to look at this topic in particular?
Yeah, so Topside is it's a very broad word, and it's really the key part of a platform, an FPSO or FLNG or whatever it can be that to enable the production of oil and gas. So what we're going to talk about is what we mean by Topside or Topside production system, Topside processing system, and what we can do in that context. So if you put out some illustrations that we have, we can talk a little bit about what we do there, what this mean, and what are we doing special there, and what are things that we think that is important to keep in mind that can make these systems better.
Right.
So really,
yeah, please.
So really, what we when we talk about the Topside is illustrated here by a generic FPSO. One of the primary purpose, what we want to do is enable oil gas production from the field, and in order to do that, in some way there needs to be a treatment of the fluids, separating oil, gas, water, sand that is all produced together in one way or the other. And the normal approach to that is to have a floating facility or a fixed platform or anything like that to make that happen, either close to the wells or in a distance from the wells. What we do as a group with process and flow technology, with the group that I'm responsible for, is the Wellstream processing group, is we provide equipment into this, and there are certain steps that are happening, and I'll come back to that on some other illustrations. But what it's one of the key things here is how can we do this processing that is on these facilities in the most efficient way, both when you're making it in the first place and when you're operating it.
So when you are, when someone's looking at kind of approaching the Topside space, what is the maybe one of the more important drivers or areas of focus for either the end user or the field owner when it comes to the Topside production process?
Besides the fact that everything needs to be safe, which is the most important thing, then you come down to the more commercial parameters that are important for the owners of a field that wants to produce the oil and gas. So the key part to this, at least from a company like ourselves to deliver solutions into it, is to enable the cost that is associated with the Topside. And finding ways that the field owners can develop these fields in the most cost-efficient way as possible. And then there are many other parameters, especially when in the field in operation, there are things like availability, like how to make sure that these facilities can operate without any obstacles, any maintenance or any stops, at least unplanned stops. So these are all the kind of key parameters. And then it's about how to enable to maximize the production. Like when you first do an investment in the field, you want to get the most out of it. So like in terms of starting up a topside facility, there is a certain capacity, and very often that there's uncertainty with the capacity, like what kind of production you will get from the reservoirs before you start the production. And then a key part for the operators is how they can actually optimize this by enabling increased production, enabling to take in more wells, enabling to take in other fields if that's possible or an option, and things like that. So it's also the flexibility during the lifetime of the field is very important. And then, of course, how to operate this in a safe way, to get understanding of the field, how to operate this, to minimize the cost of operation and maximize the production. So these are typical things. So, but if you go into again, another illustration, the second illustration, that is more or less going into the details of what we saw on the first one. So the first one showed really the facility as such, but what is really happening on this facility is really like what you need is to treat the separation, or not, they treat the oil, gas, water, and sand. By doing separation, you're doing gas treatment, you do oil treatment, you do produced water treatment, sand treatment. Very often there is a need for water injection, seawater injection, or maybe produced water reinjection into the reservoir. There's all different fields are different. And this is one of the key things, and this is where I think we play a very important role, is that non-field are exactly the same, which is unique to an industry. Like that's also why an oil production or gas production facility is very much one of a kind, while many other processing facilities in other industries, they're more the same, where you have more known understanding of what's coming into the processing plant. But in the oil and gas facility, it's always going to be different and always change over time. So what we as a group are focused on is to deliver the solutions into this. I think one of the key areas for us, and I'll come back with some more illustration later on, but one of the key thing for us is that in order to build these facilities, like we have the detailed understanding of all the products that are shown on this list. So everything related to the separation and processing step on a topside facility is our expertise. We deliver the product, we have a detailed understanding of the product. And I think when it comes to the things like cost reduction, production optimization, supporting fields in operation, a key part for us is that by the detailed understanding of the various steps, we can avoid having certain treatment steps because we can combine it into one. We can understand where you see the challenging in certain project. It's a challenging oil to treat. It's another project. It's a gas challenging, water treatment challenges like it. And we have that fundamental understanding to be able to approach that in order to make facilities in a very optimal way. At the same time, we're covering the full range of product that enable us to combine things that are normally treated by different suppliers. We can combine it into one more integrated package.
So, so, I actually kind of want to touch on that point just a little bit more. So you kind of described a little bit in terms of what NOV, how NOV has kind of approached this area. I'm curious if you could just maybe recap that a little bit more in terms of what has NOV's role been traditionally, and then do you see that changing?
Yeah, so NOV's role and the group that I'm working with, role has been really to supply processing equipment, separators, produced water treatment equipment, packages, and modules. But normally with a one specific function, either like a module to enable seawater injection, for instance. And that is really how the industry has been working, is that you have a traditional EPC company that are very good at making a complete topside, complete production system, and split up the various pieces of the systems in a way that can go to a various number of suppliers to get someone to make these different pieces and making a process guarantee for the function of each of these pieces. What we normally see then is that you get a system that are designed by very good engineers that are very good at handling that large scope, but not necessarily know the details of how each processing steps are taken. So that's one approach that we are focused on, and I can, if you go to the third illustration that I have, just to demonstrate where our starting point is. Like, if you really look at what we're doing on a topside facility, is the treatment of oil, water, and gas, which are all fluids that has a specific and unique chemistry. A lot of the design challenges, a lot of the operational challenges that you get on an oil facility is because this chemistry is a fairly complex chemistry, and it's unique from each field. So we have our abilities to make complete processing systems start with a industry-leading understanding of the fundamental of the chemistry and the fluid dynamics into the topside process, and the ability to design, model, and evaluate performance based on that unique detailed competence. And that is very unique, and that is what is needed in order to make good products. But what we as an NOV, with the ability to do this in a larger scale, is that we have both this expertise into the product, but we also have the capabilities to combine this into the various type of the module. And the fact that we do gas, oil, water, sand, all in one group, is that we can start looking at how does this chemistry work, and how can we make a system that are optimal for a complete topside. So if you then just to taking the last illustration that I have as part of this, to just illustrate this, is that what our ability to, or the way we are looking at it, is that going all the way from being a detailed product expert and experts in the fundamentals of the fluids and the chemistry into this, and delivering process equipment, and also combining process equipment in a unique way, and then could work with the one that is developing the whole field or developing the complete floating facility, and play a role that we can find the way to make the most cost efficient and the best operating facility that could be made together with the one that is making the complete facility.
So if you're just joining us, we're talking with Rune Fantoft, the Senior Vice President for Wellstream Processing, and we're talking about topside solutions from the Process and Flow Technologies part of the business. So if you have questions for Rune regarding topside solutions, technology therein, or any other questions, feel free to put that in the comment section on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, and we will try to start getting those questions over to him as we continue our conversation here. So Rune, I wanted to follow up and ask, as NOV, continues to obviously provide technology, in this space specifically, as a technology provider, how does that expertise translate into helping, essentially get more production or optimal production for the production systems and execution for all those involved?
So one thing related to operation is that very often the challenge when you design a field is that there's a lot of uncertainty, and there's a lot of new things happening during operation. So we are very much involved in the bottlenecking, optimization of the production facility. How can we put in some new equipment? How can we modify some equipment? Recommend operational procedures, recommending maintenance procedures to enable the the increased production. For us, it's all about like the understanding of like how does this process really work and what can you do with it in order to improve it, and not only applying industry standard design rules that are very often used, but how to actually apply the detailed understanding to make the operation more optimal.
Okay. All right. Well, I know that we're starting to have some questions come in on social, so we'll start to try to get those in. Actually, let's do that right now. Maybe let's go ahead and see if we can get Shelby Domain. There she is, social media manager. Hey, Shelby. So, what are some of the feedback that's coming in online?
Yeah, some great discussions, Michael. This first question comes from David Stokes on LinkedIn. And he said that he's often thought of NOV as more of a product sales business as opposed to a service or solutions based. And so he was wondering, is NOV moving more towards solution and service based, or is it still product line specific?
I think the product lines are still there in the fundamental of what NOV are doing, and will continue to do that. I think the group Wellstream Processing and several other groups in NOV is actively pursuing and able to support our customers with solutions. I think it's important in order to apply our work on how to apply the products and the solution, or products that we have, in a better way. So offering that as a fixing a problem or defining a solution for the customer. So definitely, this is a high focus. That is like something that the Wellstream Processing Group has always been focused on, and we're pushing that more and more. And I think that is something that will probably is also the case with other parts of NOV. So yes, we're definitely working in that area. Also on the services side, how to support our customer, not only to service our product, but to help them with the operation and how to optimize their operation based on our fundamental understanding and our products. So definitely we are going more and more in that direction, and I want to work with customers on that. But it's not because that we're not doing the products anymore.
Yeah, that was a good question. Thanks, David.
Yeah. And we have another question from LinkedIn. In the projects we run, what is the usual scope limit? Is it subsystems or entire projects?
Can you please repeat? I'm not sure if I understood the question. Like, if the project we run, if we're subsystems or entire project?
Yeah,
Yes.
it sounds like the question is kind of asking what's NOV's scope limit when we're getting into projects.
Yeah, so normally we are like, if you look at the complete floating facility, that is not what we would normally do. If we would do that, it will be with some partners that can do things that we normally don't do. So we don't provide a complete floating facility as a turnkey project. We normally supply solutions into that with either partners or customers. So normally, traditionally, we have a sub-scope, I would say, like our customers splitting up the process into a number of sub-processes, and we are providing that. But we have more and more discussions with customers that we are combining these subsystems into larger systems, and in some cases, the complete process being an NOV scope. And that's an ambition that we have, and we're already doing it to more and more degree. And we are very flexible in terms of execution model. We want to provide solutions for a customer, and whatever can be the best solution. If we take a large scope, combining packages into one, or we continue to deliver individual packages, we will do both.
Mm-hmm. Our next question comes from Michael on LinkedIn. He was wondering, when do you normally start to spec in the process equipment specifications? Does it start from the feed stage or directly spec'd at the EPCI tender?
It changes from project to project and from customer to customer. Our experience is that the more difficult a certain process or a sub-process may be, the earlier you would involve in this discussing the solution and to specify the solution. So we are involved in some project probably years before we get into the feed in some cases, on some very large project where we have some very specific need, and where one of our technologies might be very important for the overall design of the complete facility. If that equipment or that product or that subsystem wouldn't work, then the whole facility would not work. In that case, we are involved very early. Normally, like it could be before feed, it could be something that we are defining and specifying during the feed with our customers. And in some cases, like a feed, the purpose of it is to really define the more the detailed scope of each of the packages. So often that is involved in the feed, and in some cases it's just before the project itself starts. So it's excuse me. It's a dynamic. It depends on the complexity of that specific package when you get involved, and it depends on how the various customer want to run the project.
So if you're just joining us, we're talking with Rune Fantoft, the Senior Vice President for Wellstream Processing, and we're having a conversation on Topside solutions from the Process and Flow Technologies part of NOV's business. And we're actually in the process of trying to get as many of your questions in to Rune as we can today. So if you have a question, feel free to put it in the comment section on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, and we will try to get that in as quickly as we can. So speaking of questions and comments, looks like those are still coming in. So we're going to go ahead and bring Shelby Domain back in to help get your questions in. Hey, Shelby.
Hey, Michael. So this one also comes from LinkedIn. Garima was wondering, could you help the audience understand to what extent the Topside solutions enhance the overall economics of the entire project lifecycle? And if so, how do you measure that impact and ensure quality checks?
So how it affects the overall economy is a key factor is really the complete cost of the Topside facility, like the investment on, like when a field is developed, like the investment into the production facility is a large part of the investment. And if it's a floating facility, for instance, the investment in the floating facility is large investment, and also the Topside, all the process equipment. So and often if you have a complex process, the facility becomes complex, especially if it's floating. And the more compact, more efficient, simpler we can make that, then the more cost efficient the project will be. Basically, investment level before we start producing is going to go down, which improves the return on the investment for the field owner. At the same time, it's a lot about the production itself, and not necessarily OpEx, like how to avoid problems during operations, how much maintenance do you need. That's one factor, and that's of course to have a low cost side on that affects the economy, but also to enable optimization of the production, that you will then enable that you can produce faster, you can tie in new wells, new fields that enable to reuse the infrastructure more than just by the original production. That will help the cash flow in the positive direction during operations. So there's multiple ways that what we do impact it, and if we do something wrong, then that impact it. If you need to stop production, or you cannot produce at the rate that you want during the operation time, then of course that has a negative impact on the cash flow. So what is really key for us is to enable that's not happening, and that we are rather enabling larger production.
So Rune, maybe a question that those that are more familiar in this space might have is, you know, as you've been talking and showing some of the approaches and ways that NOV looks at some of the Topside solutions, a question might come to mind is NOV, you know, essentially trying to be an EPC company, or, you know, for kind of the complete Topside projects, or are we trying to go more towards a model that's supporting traditional EPCs for field development?
We're definitely a group that are product solutions and expertise in the area of processing, and we can execute fairly large projects in terms of multiple modules that is on the Topside facility, but and also at some level of integration of those. But in the end of the day, when it comes to building a complete offshore facility, or onshore for that sake, like we are not the one that is going to take the full responsibility of executing it. It requires a lot of special, like detail engineering and system engineering capabilities beyond the processing, but also on the floating side and then the structural side, like many other elements of the overall production facility. It requires a fairly complex EPC organization to do that. We rather want to work with those who do that, whether it's partners or customers or different ways. That's up to us, or not up to from project to project. The thing for us is that I think we have an ability to offer a broad range of process solutions. We can integrate this and we can optimize it together. So work with EPC companies working with us, that will then, we together will be enable a better project for the end user.
So maybe another question for you. Especially today, I mean, and this is any case, but specifically now, operators are looking to really improve the efficiency and overall use of the facilities. So how can operators improve the use of the topside facilities and field life, working with folks like yourself and the teams at NOV?
So I think there is a big upside potential for most operator to work more proactively how to optimize the facility during operation. We have specialist teams that go out in the field, take samples, evaluate the performance, find problems with the operation, how to avoid problems, how to reduce chemical consumption, how to increase production through certain equipment. Very often that you have problems with your produced water, it's not necessarily because of your produced water system, it might be because of something else in the system. We have experts that go in together with the operators to find better solutions. I can recommend things that can be done on the facility by changing the operation procedures, by changing some internals in the separator, changing some equipment, adding some equipment that can make the overall system more optimal during the production at the production rates and the conditions that you have and are planning to have. We also have remote operating or remotely service opportunities that we can work together with the operators in many different ways. So I think that we have many good examples, many good reference cases where we have been working with operators to solve problems and increase production. And I think that is something that we hope that more and more operators see the opportunities and can work with us on that, and we can do something that will benefit them.
Great. Well, it looks like we've got looks like one more question in the comments, and I think I have one more for you, as I know that we start to wrap up this conversation. Been talking about topside solutions from the process and flow technologies part of the business here at NOV. So Shelby, I think we have an interesting question talking about how we can potentially utilize some of these technologies.
We do. So David on LinkedIn was wondering, do you see opportunities to evolve into decommissioning with these solutions?
That's not something that we have done yet. Obviously, we want to find solutions to increase production and also to extend the lifetime of a facility. When you get into decommissioning, it becomes more a mechanical job to handle it. I think there's a lot of opportunities in that direction, but like in terms of actually the processing part is in the first place is not really what we have in mind when we're looking, like when someone is looking at that.
Mm-hmm. So maybe to round out our conversation, one of the components that is certainly prevalent is around the area of digitalization and really understanding how to capture that part of the area. So could you talk about the impact that you see on Topside with respect to the design and considerations that are coming in, especially when you're overlaying again that idea of digitalization?
Everybody talks about digitalization, and I want to emphasize that at least not the processing group are a specialist in itself by the digital infrastructure, because they are companies that provide solutions that can enable communication of data from an operation to us. But what we are heavily involved in, and I think leading in the industry, our part of the industry, is the link between the expertise and product understanding with supporting proactively the operators with both operating the equipment that we provide and also to troubleshoot and optimize their facilities. So many of these things I mentioned like we go out in the field to support operators, we can do that also from our office now. And we do that and have a lot of discussions with operators, whether FPSO companies or oil companies, that with finding the right data, we have some very unique proprietary models that are looking at the data that is being collected that can give automatically operators advice of what to do. For instance, in cleaning processes, identify what kind of chemicals, recommended chemical injection regime, that kind of things that can be done without our involvement, just applying our tools. And then we also have the possibility to bring in data to our experts that are specialists in chemistry and the fluid dynamics, the product itself, the mechanical part of it. And I can look at it and in combination with things that we already automate that can be more or less recommended by use of artificial intelligence. Then we also have the expert that has real intelligence that can go in there and make recommendations for operators. So this becomes a much more proactive relationship. So this is something that I think will really make us more involved and help the operator more for the operator to operate their facilities better. This is also getting into the engineering part of the projects where we're also applying similar tools to make the project more efficient and then link the tools that we make during the project with what is happening when the field's in operation, and we can support them based on the tools that we have developed together in the project. So a lot of things happening there. I think we are doing more than most, and it's really very exciting to see how the processing facility on the Topside really become advanced digital setup that will make the production better.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to continued development in that space. So we've been talking with Rune Fantoft, the Senior Vice President for Wellstream Processing, and we've been talking about Topside solutions from the Process and Flow Technologies part of NOV. So Rune, thanks so much for your insight and expertise today.
Thank you.
So if you weren't able to get your question in today, or if you're watching this after our live show and wanted to get your question answered by Rune, feel free to send an email to him, and we'll put his email on the screen. It's rune.fantoft, that's rune.fantoft @nov.com. And Rune and others will be more than happy to engage with you and answer your question. So we appreciate you joining us today on this conversation. We will continue on today as we look to talk about a really innovative technology that is helping transform subsea water treatment. So that'll be coming up at 7 a.m. U.S. Central Time or 1 p.m. UTC. And that'll definitely be a great conversation with our expert, Torbjorn Hegdal. I want to thank you for joining us on this segment of our program, and we will continue as we look at tech across the industry. I'm Michael Gaines. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you later.